Ferocious versus Vampiric, what's the best legendary perk? In case you didn't know, zero weapons are the best in the game, and you get them from going to zero altar and combining 7 different legendary items. When you combine these legendaries, you get the choice to pick 3 perks to put on your zero weapon. 2 of them are common perks, and the other is legendary perk. The best common perks are attack up and burn chance, but crit stack is usable, and the best legendary perk is situational. Last video, I compared Ferocious to Elite Assassin and Boss Bane, and from my testing, Ferocious was slightly better than the legendary perks because Ferocious had a 40% cap instead of 30% on the other 3. This means it dealt 10% more damage with the Ferocious buff active. But last video, I did not test Vampiric. Vampiric was also changed with the perk overhaul update. Vampiric used to only heal yourself similar to Life Drain and increase the crit chance of your auto attacks, which wasn't useful. But after the change, Vampiric had its max value increased by 5%, and the perk was revamped to deal percent-based damage in addition to the healing. The proc deals 1.67% enemy HP per tick for 3 ticks. For the testing, I have a perfect Vampiric and Ferocious staff, both with burn chance, and the pets I used were Vampiric Witch Cat and a Boss Bane Fox Deer. My armor was 100 glass, 20 untouchable, and 8 damage reduction. On the summoner, I dealt 19505 base damage with Vampiric and Ferocious. The Vampiric proc dealt 5896 damage per tick against this mob for 3 ticks totaling 17688. With the Ferocious buff active, it hit for 27308 or a 40% increase on hit. For the dungeon testing, I did each dungeon with the Vampiric weapon once, and then I tried multiple times with the Ferocious weapon to match or beat the Vampiric time. This was because Ferocious is significantly harder to optimize than Vampiric, which is why I tried multiple times with Ferocious. For the first dungeon, Aether Fortress, here's an example of Vampiric gameplay. You can see all of the status effects on the top of the screen. You got Vampiric, Burn Chance, and the White Fox Deer. And I also ended up finishing this dungeon in 303 with a Vampiric staff. For the Ferocious weapon, I have to purposely take damage without dying, and here's an example of that, proccing the Ferocious buff. Then here's an example of me proccing the Ferocious buff, and then getting absolutely owned. But anyways, run it back, and I ended up finishing the dungeon 303 as well. Both weapons finished in 303. For the Grave Tower dungeon here, this is what Vampiric looks like. Kind of just going in there, rolling my face across the keyboard, and then finishing the dungeon. And for Ferocious, you have to get hit to proc Ferocious, and so I end up getting feared, and I just end up using my pet skill, and then kind of awkwardly just killing everything. But the final dungeon time, because of the fear, Ferocious is way slower for this dungeon. For the Crescent Cove, I think this is called like King's Crab or something like that. This place is really short, and so Ferocious really shines here. Look at this giant pool here. How much cleaner the Ferocious weapon is able to just kill everything because of the damage amp buff. And the boss fight is where Vampiric kind of shines, but Ferocious was so far ahead because it clears the mob so much faster than Vampiric that it didn't even matter how much faster the Vampiric weapon killed the boss. Ferocious was just way faster overall in the dungeon and finished the dungeon 3 seconds faster. For the next dungeon here, Kono Inferno, the larger health pools really shows the Vampiric perk. So see here, the boss is at half health. We have no ult, no pet skill, but the Vampiric is proccing and it is burning and slowly melting the boss down. However, on Ferocious, it's a different story because as longer boss fights go on, you don't have any more health to proc Ferocious. So see here, the boss is already half health, but I don't have any more health to take Ferocious buff, so that I'm pretty much just playing with 2 weapon perks here. I don't have Ferocious because if I take Ferocious, I'm gonna pretty much risk dying. Ferocious was way slower on the longer boss fights, but way faster on the shorter ones. The optimized build tier list says Ferocious is the best perk in the game, and for short boss fights and short dungeons, I definitely agree. Ferocious is pretty good. However, for longer boss fights, Vampiric is without a doubt the better perk because of its percentage-based damage. And from my testing, there really wasn't any difference between the perks. Strictly by numbers, Vampiric was better, but if you look at the grand scheme of things, it's kind of even. It's also really hard to take damage in this game. A lot of the enemy attacks will straight up just CC you. Like they will fear you, stun you, slow you, freeze you, it is so hard to take damage without getting locked. And on top of all of this, Ferocious sucks on ranged classes. Why would a ranged class that plays from ranged, it's in the name, want to go into melee and purposely get hit? It's just counterintuitive. After all, ranged classes are the superior class due to the way the bosses are designed. If you look at this boss, you can't play the game if you're playing melee here. You can't. But ranged, doesn't matter, you can just keep hitting the boss. And this is how every single boss is designed in World 0. In all, I think Vampiric is the best legendary perk, but Ferocious is definitely one of the perks of all time. You want to min-max your way through the game and retry dungeons over and over to slowly lower your clear times, then go for it. But I think for practical, all-around use, Vampiric is the better damage perk. Additionally, it's usable in Infinite Tower and not just dungeons, which for that reason alone, I think Vampiric is better to go for. For melee classes, Ferocious is definitely a good perk, but I don't have Ferocious melee weapon, and I'm not spending millions of gold crafting another 0 weapon, so I'll gladly stick to my Mage of Shadows and Vampiric.